never know if it's actually doing anything. If anybody's actually hearing me, I have no idea. Hello, Lance. If you can hear me. Oh, Zoper's here. Mr. LED. And Daryl, of course, he's been here for like an hour. So yeah, hi. Go ahead. We're an Asian. What? What are you talking about? Okay. I don't know. Turning Japanese? Everything's fine here. Okay, they can hear us. We're live. So yeah, let's just let people come in a little bit before we really get started. But this is loosey goosey. Like I don't have a real plan. We're just going to talk about Invasion of the Body Snatchers. Oh, and Scott's here. Hello, Scott. And Nicole is here. Excellent. Oh, Thrash. Hold on. So, Thrash has no audio? Hold on a second. Let me see if I can fix that. Yeah, hold on. Yeah, there's nothing coming in through here. Hold on. I can hear you. Hold on. It's probably just the audio properties. Technical difficulties. Dang it. Stupid. Hold on. Let's try. No, that's the sound output.
Yeah. The sad thing is I keep stopping to listen, and I'm like, well, if I stop to listen, then there won't be anything to hear.
It sounds like you're there. I mean, it looks like you're there. Okay,
oh,
keep
you
talking.
can see sound now, huh?
I can see sound on the bar here,
You
yeah.
can see sound now. 7 years ago, our founding fathers put forth... I used to have that speech memorized. I am Odysseus, great Laertes' son. You can hear me?
I can hear, obviously. I don't know. I'm waiting for the commenters, yeah.
Yeah. Folks, if you can hear me, let me know.
I don't think he was actually singing.
I am Odysseus, great Laertes' son, for cunning plans of every kind, even to heaven to spread my fame. My native land is Ithaca. Rugged it is, this land of mine, and lies for aught to see into the west. But I can find no land more sweet to me than this.
Impressive.
Yeah. And that was 40 years ago. I learned that, by the way. The fact I got that far still amazes me.
I had memorized a bunch of different Shakespeare soliloquies, but they've all gone. I have nothing left in my brain. I remembered the "Lend me your ears" speech from Julius Caesar, and of course "To be or not to be." And there was a couple others, but nothing. I went to college, and all my memory just disappeared.
It's good. Now I believe Superplex said that they can hear me all right now.
Yeah, I heard a couple people said it. Yeah.
Good. And I'm gonna try to watch because I'm on a lag, and it's throwing when I actually watch myself speak. It's throwing me off because my lips are moving and I'm not saying anything. I'm gonna have to.
So don't look at yourself.
I'm trying to train myself to look right here, but I'm such a narcissist.
I know. Anytime I'm on any kind of Zoom meeting or live stream, I'm always staring at myself. I'm not staring at anybody else.
I know. But...
And yes, Scott, I know it's called capgrass. I was actually going to talk about that, but you already beat me to it. He's a psychologist. Dang it.
Oh, and hello to all you folks out there. I think I am going to have to put my glasses back on, but it ruins my expression, but I can see a little bit better. Yes, I can see much better now. Das Gimp, Nicole Baker, Mr. Led, Super. I feel like Romper Room. Lance in the house. Cat Martinez, Mr. Led again. Baked Bean. How
nice
we doing,
to
boss?
see you all.
Yeah. And I see Bobby. Oh, actually, I can actually. And I see Bobby and Cindy and Emilio and. Sometimes graphics are really tough for me to see.
Right.
So,
They're having fellowship, so that's all good. So you read the book and you watched the three movies. You didn't watch the most recent one because it doesn't count, but you watched the other three. You watched all of them.
Yes, I did. And I must confess, I hadn't read the book up until my preparation for this chat. It was one of those things that was always on my list, and most people actually said basically what you did, that the book wasn't particularly good, and it had its moments. The big thing about the book, I gotta say, is it sort of set the stage. I mean, the sort of jump scare theme that is so common now.
Right.
I could see it as being very innovative back then. So it was basically like the alpha patient, you might say. One thing I couldn't understand is it's set in 1976, which is 20 years past the contemporary period the book was written in.
Right. It was
Why?
supposed to be the future. Yeah, it doesn't even seem to make any difference. I don't know.
He makes no references to it. He doesn't even mention the fact it's the bicentennial.
Right.
I mean, it could have been 20 years in the past. You know what I'm saying?
Well, it was
I
just
mean,
Jack Finney just liked to set things in different times. I mean, he wrote a lot of time travel books, and he didn't like to stick to the present day. I think that was the only reason he said it in the future.
but there was no robot butlers, no flying
Yeah,
cars.
nothing.
Yeah, nothing to show that it was 20 years in the future.
That would have made it a lot more fun. My
Maybe.
biggest
Well, go
my
ahead.
biggest problem with the book was really the ending. Like everything else, yeah, it's not a great book, but it is like decent until you get to the end, and then it's just like a sudden happy ending, and it doesn't jive. It doesn't fit this tone of the story at all. That was my big problem.
I know when they just sort of give up on the earth because it'd be too much trouble. But one thing I did like the fact is the pod people that were there, they just sort of give up and go on with their lives. And he had found out over the course that they only live about 5 years.
Right.
And he mentioned that, and in about 5 years, the problem just sort of resolved itself. They were all dead. You know, these new people sort of moved in. It was almost like a slam on gentrification,
Oh
where
yeah, I can see
all
that.
these like other people just started buying their properties and stuff. And so it was just odd that they just sort of, well, the invasion's over, so the ones that are here, I'll just sort of put up with, and they do.
You
He just
just
sort of waits them out.
live happily for 5 years and then they're gone. Right. I don't know, man.
One of the weird things is the video you did with Schneider, which I thought was outstanding. If you people haven't seen it, you got to check it out. It's right here on YouTube. But I love the fact you said it was about an allegory about divorce.
It is. Yeah.
And the funny thing you mentioned is one of my favorite post-apocalyptic books of all time is Greybeard by Brian Aldiss, which is about there's a freak nuclear accident which causes global sterility. So babies stop being born, and it's basically the last generation reflecting on what it is to be human as the world empties. And his inspiration for that was when Aldous divorced his second wife, or when she left him, I should say. She took the children, and all he could think of is it's a world without children, which caused him to. So Greybeard is also effectively a story about divorce. I wonder if divorce makes good dystopian fiction.
Right. Yeah. I don't know. But like a lot of people believe, just as a matter of course, that the original, at least the original movie, is about communism, and that the book was about communism. I don't actually think it was.
Really? What's your take?
Well, I think you can definitely read it. It is a valid reading, and it is like in that postmodernist sense that if you create a story in a certain time period, you're gonna get cultural relevance from the story. I get that, but knowing Jack Finney, because I've read a lot of his stuff and I've read like what he has to say about his own book, I don't think he was trying to make any kind of allegory about communism. And a lot of people say that about the movie, which sure, there are things in the movie that really do like lean in that direction, especially where he's like, they're already among us, it's too late, you're next, but like they say that they couldn't come out, and I mean the filmmakers all admit that they didn't think it was communism. They didn't even see that as what the subtext of the movie was. And a lot of people get all conspiratorial and say, well, of course they had to say that, it was the 50s. And that doesn't make sense to me, because sure, you don't want to write anything that is like pro-communist, but this would be, if you read it as a communist allegory, it's anti-communist, right? So why would they have to hide it? I don't know. And one of the writers, the main writer of the screenplay, David Mainering, I think, is actually a pen name for a blacklisted author. So
Really?
that he would write some kind of anti-communist sci-fi movie seems really weird to me. But then,
Unless he was writing it ironically,
see, my take
as
is
the kids say these days.
my take is that it is about divorce. That like it's about a couple who have drifted so far apart that they're not recognizable to each other anymore. That like you feel betrayed by the one you love the most, but not because they've done anything overtly against you. It's just that you've drifted apart. You're not the same people anymore. And so you start to question everybody. You start to see everybody through a different lens. Like, are they going to be loyal? Are they going to be? I've never been through divorce. This is all just like extrapolation and how I imagine it would be. And Jack Finney had, and that's what he was, I think, trying to get at, and that's what he says he was trying to get at. And you can still see that in the original 1956 movie. Everyone after that, there's definitely political overtones. Like, they leaned into it, and it's fine. I don't mind. I'm just saying, I don't think the original was about communism. I really don't. And everybody, I'm like very minority opinion. Most people think it's about communism.
Well, it's funny you mentioned the divorced couple and how they suddenly don't even know each other anymore. I've never been through divorce either, although my wife has begged us to. I've found that when people go through a divorce, there's always that feeling of betrayal, and on both sides.
Right, yeah.
It's like, I don't even know you, and it's like, and as you so aptly put it, well, if I don't know you, I don't know anybody. It's almost like the entire world is out against me. And it becomes Queeg and the Caine Mutiny. They were against me. They were all against me. So yeah, I can certainly see that as a sense of, and of course, one thing the book mentions very, very, very vividly is the fact that both the main characters had just recently gone through a divorce.
Right.
And that even brings them together, like, oh, we're both part of the fraternity now, aren't we? You know, which is funny because in the movie they downplay that immeasurably.
It's
and
there, like they say
it's
it.
there,
Yeah,
but they
about
downplay it.
Yeah.
And I'm not entirely sure why. Maybe because divorce wasn't as prevalent in the 50s.
Maybe.
So it was considered an un-chic thing to talk about. It became very chic, ironically, in the 70s, where the book was set. I mean, that's when my parents got divorced.
Right.
So
I'm sorry to hear that.
Oh,
it was a long time
point.
ago, but you know.
I was 5. It was a half century ago.
Wow.
Literally a half century. Crazy. But I remember being a kid in school, and the teachers still referred to that as being of a broken home at the time.
Right. Yeah.
You know, I mean, nowadays, like when my daughter was growing up, everyone was from mixed families. So this is my stepbrother from my mother's second marriage, and this is my cousin. You know, it's like, and it becomes so commonplace that, well, everyone had a stepbrother, a stepsister, because your parents had divorced and got remarried.
Right.
But so tell me, because the debate goes on, and Mr. Led himself said that the main reason why he's joining this one is because he wants to weigh in on his favorite. And I'm going to give the game away, Letty. His favorite is still the original.
That's a valid opinion. Like,
what's your favorite?
Oh, my favorite's 78. I don't hide that at all. But
I know. I was doing that on purpose.
On the poll that I put on my YouTube channel, I think 78 got almost 50%. I swear I wasn't putting my thumb on the scale, but like the second place was 56, which I think is right. I think that's correct. And if you like the 56 one better, I'm not going to tell you you're wrong. It's a great movie. I love it. Yeah.
Oh, it is. It was great. I too, as you well know, the 78 is my favorite version. I thought Sutherland just knocked it out of the park. He was perfect as the sort of faltering man of action is the only way I can describe it. And the supporting cast was just so fantastic as well. Jeff Goldblum chewing up the scenery as this sort of angry sociology student who I knew so many guys like that when I was in college. It wasn't even funny. Where he starts spouting off about Jack London out of the blue, and I'm like, "Oh, you too, huh?" And of course, Leonard Nimoy as that sort of self-help guru therapists that were so
They were
popular in the
everywhere in the
70s.
70s, yeah.
They were all over the place. My mother actually went to one for a while. Wonderful woman, knew nothing about the mental health profession, but very pleasant person. And well,
Well, speaking of mothers, my mother is in here. Hi, Mom. That DGMARMP is my mother.
hi, Tug's mom, mother of Tug.
Yep. And maybe I have a soft spot for 78 because that's the year I was born. I'm from 1978. This movie's from 1978. It's a match made in heaven.
You're about my brother's age. My brother was born in 77. My sister was 79. So you're about there.
Right.
You're like right in the middle. Yes. And it's so funny you mentioned 78 because I remember when, because you might find this hard to believe, when I was a kid, I watched a lot of sci-fi, like those creature double features on Saturday
Really?
afternoon. My, yeah, oh yeah, my earliest memory actually. My earliest memory, because my dad always had Saturdays off, and after Saturday morning cartoons, he and I would watch old sci-fi horror movies. That's probably where I got my start. And so you can blame my father for everything, I guess.
Can't we all?
That's a shout out to you, Mom. But I was actually visiting my father in New York at the time, and I saw for the first time the 56 version, and I thought it was amazing. And right around this time, um, it was 78. The movie had come out. And I remember some kids in my class were talking about this really wild, scary movie about pods that turn into people. And I go, wait, I just saw that. And remakes weren't unheard of at the time, but they were fairly rare. And
Right.
I started talking with my friends, and they go, "Oh yeah, it's a movie about da 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 da." And I go, "I saw the same exact movie, only in black and white on TV."
Right.
And it was this,
This movie already exists?
this exactly. And I was able to tell them what happened. Well, some of the things that happened, and they go, "Oh yeah, that kind of is what happened in this." So no, I didn't see the '78 version. I think until it was on HBO a couple years later.
Right.
I didn't see it in the theaters, unfortunately. But it was just weird that there was this odd connection, even though they really are they're very very different movies.
They are, but like
They're both.
it's amazing how much the plot the 78 one actually does retain. Even though it's completely different, the plot itself, the like basic plot beats are basically the same. The setting is completely different, the characters are pretty different, but like yeah, the plot still unfolds in roughly the same way, which I think is really interesting.
One thing I had completely forgotten, and it actually blew my mind because I haven't seen the '56 version in years, but I re-saw it in preparation
Yeah.
for this. I had completely forgotten that that sort of false flag with the music playing
Yeah, yeah.
is in both movies. And in both, a spoiler alert, guys, in both, he actually leaves the girl thinking that he's found an ally.
Right.
And as it turns out, that just it's pod people who just forgot to turn the radio off. And when he goes back, all is lost. So I was amazed at just how, in that sense, the two films are very 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 similar.
Yeah, for sure.
So now, what do you think of the third one, or shall I say the last one? Because none of us want to talk about the
All right.
one we won't talk about.
I did rewatch it again last night just to get it fresh in my mind because I hadn't watched it since like 2 or 3 years ago. Um, I I don't hate it. There are things I really like about it. Like there are certain individual scenes that I think are kind of brilliant. Like there's a scene where there's a kid and he's drawing in class and he holds up his painting and everybody else holds up their painting and everybody else's painting is exactly the same and his is different. And he's got to like you see it in his face like is something wrong with me, is what's going on, what is this? And I think that scene in by itself is great. In fact, everything about the kid is pretty great in the movie. I love the kid in the movie. But it's extremely heavy-handed and it's made by a bunch of B-movie like icons. Like Stuart Gordon was one of the writers. He's the guy who made Reanimator and other stuff. I can't remember the name of the director, but like there's a couple of different people who are really big names in like great B movies, like
Larry Cohen.
Larry Cohen, exactly. And like I feel like what was happening here was they were trying to make an A-list movie, but they just didn't know how. Like they were taking it a little too seriously. Like either the movie needed to lean in more on the camp, or it needed to be done by people who knew how to make an A-list movie. Because what you wind up with is this weird hybrid. It's not quite campy enough to be fun, but it's not quite serious enough to be scary. And that's just kind of the feel it gives. Like there's some good cinematography, but then they like feel the need to tilt the camera a lot and zoom in and be all, B movie about it. I don't know how else to put it.
Oh, I'm with you. I know I'm with you.
And the actors are fine. None of them stand out to me. Like I know a lot of people like Meg Tilly. I think she's fine, but that scene where she's revealed that she's a pod person and she's, where are you going to run? Where are you going to go?
Go where?
Yeah.
Go where?
I like the writing, but her performance is really like, I don't know. It's just weird to me. Like I don't know how to put it.
It's like the second Savik in Star Trek.
Star
Bite
Trek,
my tongue.
yeah.
Star Trek, where I'm supposed to have no emotion. Well, just because you have no emotion doesn't mean you can't inflect.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? It's like she really didn't put a lot of thought in what a pod person would talk like. Her expressions were great. That scene where she's looking out the window at the woman who has the baby who hasn't been turned yet, and they sort of have this moment. That's kind of a chilling scene.
Yeah, definitely.
And but she didn't realize like what talking like a pod person would talk like, which is the same problem I had with Arlie Ermy, who now why they got him. I mean, I understand he was kind of a big draw, but why they got him still baffles me. I mean, his biggest selling point is that he just goes in and screams like a lunatic with Tourette's. I mean, that's what he brings to the table. And instead they had him play this very sort of brooding general type, and then obviously a pod person with no emotion. And I'm like, if you want to get somebody who could do that, why didn't you get Clancy Brown or someone who could do brooding as well as screen chewing? Arlie Ermy, it was almost like he was like, looking like, why am I here?
Yeah, exactly. It's like they thought, okay, military general, Arlie Ermy. Like they didn't put any more thought into it than that.
and he's like, okay, if you want me for this, I'll do it.
And that also goes to the movie's like lack of subtlety. Like you got that one scene where Arlie Ermy is looking directly into the camera and talking about how you need to be conforming. I mean, can you get more obvious?
He breaks the fourth wall.
Yeah.
He does. He literally breaks the fourth wall. And Forrest Whitaker, who I love.
I love Forrest Whitaker too, but he's just kind of there.
He's in two scenes. And speaking of like hitting over the head with it, okay, I'm supposed to be paranoid. So while I'm talking to the father, I'll keep looking over my shoulder so people will know that I'm being paranoid. And I'm like, the art of subtlety, maybe.
And he's like downing amphetamines the whole time. Like he downs more than a bottle of amphetamines. That dude would have died from a heart attack before the scene was over.
He literally does this in one scene. Where
he's like chewing on them too. He's
like they're Tic Tacs. Actually, that many Tic Tacs would probably make you sick.
And
and then his second scene where it was almost like he's like, I need to play this as a cross between Sterling Hayden in Dr. Strangelove and Tony Montana, and either one would have been fine, but put them together, they don't work.
No, it's weird. It's very weird.
And it was a pity because again, I did like him. I do agree with you. I think the kid was probably the best part of the movie. Right down to that helicopter sequence at the end.
Yeah, where he actually turns into a pod person. I thought that was really like ballsy of the writers to do that. I loved it.
It was. And
John Doe is here. Hi, John Doe.
Oh, hey, John. Welcome to the party, lad.
Sorry, kind of ignoring the comments. I'm trying not to, but like, we're having a good conversation.
I know. I should just, if there's any questions we've missed, please clue us in. You can scroll back. I can't, but keep me posted. One thing I did like, and as I'm watching the movie for the second time, I watched it a while ago, but both times all I could feel is the pieces were all there.
It could have been a great movie, yeah.
Yeah, there's that one scene where when Meg Tilly first does the, I won't do the scream. My wife's trying to take a nap, and like they cut to the that typical. It's on a military base, but it's that suburban layout, and just all of a sudden it's like something out of A Wrinkle in Time, where all the doors just sort of open
Oh
at
right,
once and
yeah,
the people
yeah.
just start pouring out. I'm like, wow, that was actually a really nice shot. And then as they're trying to escape, these two guys in like commando, urban commando garb just say, "Run, run, we'll cover you." And we had never seen these guys before. We There was no connection with them. They just happened to be there. To hold off the bad guys, and then we never see them again. So were these two guys just waiting for these kids to try to escape
Yeah, you
so they
feel
could
like
jump
it's
in the
leading up to some kind of like zombie resistance movement or
resistance group?
something,
Yeah,
and that never goes anywhere.
but
There's
but it
just
was
all
very
these
it was like
firefights in the
deliciously
background. You don't
random.
really know what's going on,
Yeah,
which could have
yeah.
been done well, but it just feels like a lost opportunity with the way it's shot. Oh, and
Mm,
BK is
mm.
here. Hey, BK.
Oh, BK on the air. How you doing, by the way? Oh, I loved that I caught the premiere of your last post. I thought it was excellent, by the way. If you guys get a chance, please check out BK's most recent post. It was great stuff.
I've been listening to a
Excellent.
lot of his older shows, just catching up because I only knew about BK recently. I only learned about him recently through you, of course.
I'm the go-between. I bring everyone together. That is what I bring to the table.
Yeah, I have no secrets from my mother, Mr. Led. She knows me too well, and I'm terrible at lying. I'm not a good liar.
John Doe seems to agree with everyone. This is the consensus that the Kidman Craig film is just it's a waste of time. It's almost like in Star Wars where people don't count Phantom Menace as canon. Everyone just kind of ignores that. No offense to the people in it, but yeah, we'll have it's a 5-part series, not a six. Well, what are the origins? You don't need to know the origins.
I My biggest problem with that one is that it doesn't have pod people. They're not pods. It's just like an infection that turns people into drones. It's not. There's no replicating of a person. There's no actual body snatching. That's why it's only called the invasion, and it makes it so much more generic doing it that way. It doesn't. Yeah, and the movie's trying to say 15 million different things. It's trying to use the pod people as an allegory for absolutely everything. There's like the pharmaceutical industry. There's like, I don't know. There's just all kinds of things it's trying to say all at once, and it doesn't work at all.
Too many cooks. It sounds like it's based more on Fever Dream by Ray Bradbury than on Body Snatchers. Which, in my research, by the way, if you could have found something that predated Fever Dream, let me know. But that seems to be the first case in which some type of bio entity takes over a human body and then uses that body to take over other bodies.
I'll have to look into that. Yeah,
Um,
I don't know.
yeah.
I've never read
Before
it
that, the only thing
myself.
I found
So
before that oh, Fever Dream. It's just a short story by Bradbury. It's pretty good. It's what happens is this kid gets rheumatic fever, and when the fever breaks, he realizes that one of his hands doesn't seem to belong to him anymore. It moves like independently, and he tells the doctor, and of course, the professional says, "Oh no, it was just a fever dream. You'll be fine. You'll be fine." And the kid's like, "No, no, something's taking over my body."
yeah,
And in the end, something does take over his body. And then the first thing he does when he gets out of bed is goes around touching everything. Touch, 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 touch. Like a Karen in a shop during COVID. Touch, touch, touch. And that seemed to be the alpha patient, pun intended, of the bio body takeover. Before that, much like other things in science fiction, it was not alien. It was some type of demonic possession. Like you have vampires
right.
or changelings. It was some type of demon which took over your body and turned you into something that you were not. But the first time it was a science based that I found was Bradbury.
Okay. Yeah, I'll have to look into it and see if you're right. It sounds like you're right, but I don't know. A lot of people in the comments are taking issue with you for dissing the Phantom Menace, but I don't think that's what Thrash was doing. Exactly.
We'll save that for Monday night.
Yeah, yeah, that's tomorrow night. We'll talk about that tomorrow night.
but yeah, but yeah, no, and thank you. You're right. I wasn't really dissing the movie. I was just saying it doesn't really fit with the other five. So there is a group that kind of disassociates that one with the rest of the series. But again, we'll save that for tomorrow.
That's because Star Wars fans are pretty much the worst.
Ooh, snap. Well, we all know which is better, Star Wars or Star Trek, don't we?
Oh, well, we'll talk about it tomorrow. I'm not going to give it away.
Tomorrow. I
Tomorrow. What did
know.
I say?
Tomorrow,
Tomorrow.
tomorrow. I'm sorry. I'll stop singing.
I mean, it's obvious how much I hate Star Wars. I mean, come on.
Oh, and we both love. Oh, I gotta get this one shot. We both,
Oh,
of course,
nice.
love Frankenstein. Frankenstein.
Zakharov.
And it was funny. Have you seen Gods and Monsters? By the way, totally unrelated. Have you seen Gods and Monsters?
Yes, I have. That's the one where Ian McKellen plays James Whale. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I've seen it.
Well, you made me think of that earlier when we were talking about directors and filmmakers living in fear of being canceled by the studios, having to try to get around message they're making if so as not to make them controversial. Because I think he was living proof of that.
He did that well, actually, but, eventually he got thrown out, so left to retire.
Well, if I remember correctly, correct me if I'm wrong. If I remember correctly, he in the days right before World War II, he made a movie that was very critical. It was set in Germany. It was very critical of the Nazis.
He
And at
did.
the time,
Yep.
and the British film industry was very concerned about being antagonistic towards Germany for political and financial reasons, and that's what destroyed his career. It's my understanding.
Well, that's what hurt his career in Britain, and that's one of the reasons he moved to Hollywood and started making movies for Hollywood. Well, like, okay, that goes back to the 30s. What you're talking about is after that. In the mid 40s, after World War II. Hold on. Sorry, my son brought a cold home. I think I got it.
Tell me it's not COVID again. Fingers crossed.
I hope not. Nah, he's fine. He doesn't have a fever or anything.
So no fever dream either.
What was I talking about? Oh yeah, James Whale. So in the mid 40s, he made Showboat. Wait, was that the mid 40s? I don't remember. But Showboat was what actually killed his career, and
Really?
because it was super expensive. He had major fights with the studios with Universal because Lemley was out. Lemley was no longer in charge of Universal. Lemley was James Whale's biggest advocate, and so the new studio heads didn't like him as much. They didn't like him because he was gay, and the fights over Showboat reached a fever pitch to the point where he wanted to quit, and they wouldn't let him. But the movie cost so much and didn't actually make that money back, so it was a big failure. They used that as an excuse to fire James Whale, get him out of his contract. And James Whale could have moved to other studios. He had offers, but he decided he was done. He didn't want it. He didn't want to deal with it anymore. And later, then he got diagnosed with whatever it was that killed him. I can't remember, or whatever was going to kill him. And he just quit and just retired peacefully. He had enough money to retire, so that's what happened.
Heck. Okay. Thank you. I knew you would know more of the story than I did.
Yeah, I've got a.
Heck.
Hold on a second. I got his biography right here.
Handy. Oh, Mr. Lynn asks, Thrash, where's your parched mug? Usually I drink in this very sort of
Giant,
profoundly
thing, yeah.
unnecessary, oversized. Well, today I decided to go for something a little classier, and I went with my traditional coffee mug. My daughter got me these years ago when she worked for World Market. It's a series. I have Frankenstein, Bride of Frankenstein, and the two of them together sharing a moment. Celebrate the moments, they say.
That's their brief moment of happiness.
Very brief, actually.
I think it was less than a second, really. Hold on, I'm gonna scroll back up on the comments a little bit, just see if we missed anything.
I'm sure we did.
I'm sure we missed a lot. But I'm just
Lot.
like looking for anything that jumps out at me. Just a lot of talk about Star Wars. We're not going to talk about that tonight. Today. That's tomorrow.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to derail. Although both were franchises.
That's true.
As I'm always saying to my wife, my tangent had a tangent. You could say I went rogue.
Okay, Mandy wants us to talk about the man-faced dog. So let's do that. Let's talk about the man-faced dog.
Okay, we'll talk about the man-faced dog. I gotta tell you, it was a slick move. I thought it sort of was out of place with the rest of the movie.
I can see
What do
that.
you think?
It does seem different than everything else we see in the movie. Like, you don't get that kind of gross out or just weird, surreal imagery from the movie. Like maybe you do it at the end where she dies and she in Donald Sutherland's arms. But I kind of like it. I like how it just freaks you out, and it's a play on the scene from 56 where a dog is about to get hit by a truck and she screams. It's the same thing, just even
They just
creepier.
ratcheted it up.
Yeah. I think it only works because it's very brief. Because if it had gone on for more than a few seconds, it would have looked ridiculous. And the fact that they got the dog to like stick his tongue out through the mouth
mask,
that was really good. Yeah. I don't know. I like it.
I think it was also a nod to the Mephisto waltz, which of course is about. Oh, okay. Oh, sorry. Real long story short, Alan Alda movie. What happens is this rich Satanist decides he's going to transfer his body into that of a young pianist, and his wife finds this out and tries to thwart the plan. The wife of the young pianist tries to thwart the plan,
right.
And things go awry. That's the 30-second encapsulation. But there's supposed to be these very sort of decadent, rich, have these weird parties where just weird stuff happens. And there's one scene where they bring out a dog, and the dog is wearing a human mask, and they just sort of parade this dog around, and it's supposed to be this very sort of creepy scene. And I think that was basically a nod to this other film. I can't remember who did the Mephisto waltz, so I don't know if there was some collaboration, but it's the only thing I could think of, because what they're saying in that one scene is that if you get taken over by a pod and there's some other living material next to you, the pod may inadvertently combine the two, sort of like in The Fly, another Jeff Goldblum movie.
Well, the pod was also, that's the one that Donald Sutherland kicked, so it was already damaged. So that's part of the reason that it mutated both the hobo and the dog, who were sleeping next to each other. Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right. I just thought it was a fluke, because why didn't Brooke Adams have grass growing over her? Because grass is living material.
That was weird. Yeah. Good point. But no, I think in my headcanon, that's how it worked. Is because Donald Sutherland kicked it, it mutated weirdly. Like it had a flaw. But also, one thing, in my earlier community post announcing this live stream, I had the picture of the dog with the face on it. And a couple of commenters thought it was Jerry Garcia, which is ironic. It's not Jerry Garcia. The hobo is not played by Jerry Garcia. But the music the hobo is playing was written by Jerry Garcia, which is really, it's kind of a neat little irony. Yeah.
Good catch. I never noticed that before. That's the great thing about this movie is that every time you see it, you pull something else out of it. You ever notice that? It's
totally. Yeah, that's one of the reasons I love this movie so much. Like the 56 movie, you pretty much get it after you've seen it once. You don't really need to see it again. I mean, I love it, so I've watched it more times than I can count, but it's not as deep as the 78 version. There's not as much to it.
Well, the weird thing with the 78 version is that it really plays on that sort of sense of paranoia. There's a scene where Brooke Adams is walking down a hallway and she bumps this Asian lady who gives her this bizarre look like, are you attacking me or something? But if you look really closely in the background, everyone turns around and is looking at Brooke Adams.
Right, yeah. Totally.
And it's sort of like, ooh. That's that first scene, like, well, they've all been turned and they're like trying to decide if you're a valid threat or not. But it's very, and for some reason, as they're walking down the hall, there's this guy in an office and he's pressed against the
glass, right.
And it's like he knows and he's afraid to go out of his office as a result. And there's a lot of these things that you miss the first time you watch it.
A lot of stuff is happening in the background all the time, especially when they're out in the city, because a lot of that was actually filmed on the fly, like on the sly, I mean, because this was a guerrilla filmmaking effort. They didn't have permits, so they were basically just walking in the street with cameras, sometimes trying to hide the cameras as best as they could under like jackets and stuff. So you're following Donald Sutherland and the camera's really wonky, like right at his waist level. That's because the person behind him holding the camera is holding it with a jacket over it. And they made it a point to catch a lot of the weird things that just happen day to day in a big city. Like at the very beginning, you got that guy running into a building.
Hysterically to his car.
That was just a thing that happened. That wasn't scripted. That guy wasn't an actor. That was just some guy running to his car.
Probably late for work or something. You never know.
And one of my favorite of those shots, of those incidental shots, is there's a shot of the bus. And it pans over the bus and everybody's looking out at the windows, like at the camera. That's what happened. Like that wasn't again, that wasn't scripted, that wasn't set up, that was just a shot that they did in the street. I love that stuff. I think that really adds to the paranoia factor that the city is weird. Weird things are happening in the city all the time.
And it could actually appear like it's an alien invasion, or it's because aliens have taken over it. And you know what? Maybe they have.
Good point.
I can see. My favorite though is Robert Duvall as the priest on the swing set.
Oh yeah.
Every time I watch the movie, that just. Now, I think they scripted that. I don't think that Robert Duvall just happened to be on a swing set in a priest costume and they just caught it. I think they may have asked him to do it.
He was in San Francisco filming something else, and yet they had an idea to have a priest on the swing set. What they didn't have planned was that it would be Robert Duvall until they met up with Robert Duvall and said, hey, you want to put on this priest costume and get on the swing? It wasn't originally going to be Robert Duvall. It was just going to be an extra.
Wouldn't it have been amazing, though, if that was a random thing they just caught?
That would be pretty great. Robert Duvall just happened to be there in a priest costume on the swing set. Just like his normal afternoon.
Crazy. Oh, Mandy Butler has a question from Wah. I like thrash and geek take on film because I am just horrified watching it. I buy the ticket and take the ride. That wasn't directed towards me, it was towards both of us. But yes, thank you, Mandy. I'm glad you enjoy our takes.
Appreciate it.
All I saw was thrash, so I need to know what a narcissist. It's always about me.
And we've also convinced Mr. Led to watch it again. He says he may have been watching it with prejudice for his love of the original, which is fair.
which does happen. Yeah. Which does happen. You know, there are films that I've watched that I've liked that I've wanted to not like, but I like them for some reason. I don't know. Things happen.
I have a lot of movies like that. Along the similar lines of Body Snatchers, there's the adaptation of Puppet Masters, which is not a good movie, like, at all. But for whatever reason, I love it. I can't even explain why.
It does have some good moments, but yeah, it's not. Do you know that they were supposed to make that film in the late 50s?
Yeah, I was originally going to, yeah.
And it was derailed because of the legal battle Heinlein had with Corman over Brain Eaters.
I vaguely remember reading about that. Yeah. It sounds familiar, but I'd forgotten, so thank you.
It's what I do. And it's so funny when you watch Brain Eaters, which I got to tell you, I love Brain Eaters. Leonard Nimoy's in that too, by the way. And I'm a huge Ed Nelson fan. I could figure out why he didn't become more of a leading man type. But any scene that could play any actor who could play a scene against Charlton Heston and steal the scene is pretty darn good.
That's hard to do, yeah.
It's really hard to steal a scene from Chuck Heston. I think he and Edward G. Robinson are the only people who were able to pull it off.
Oh yeah, right. But, especially in the Soylent Green. Yeah.
I know. I'm sorry, my tangent had a tangent again. I'll get there again. But anyway, originally, supposedly, Corman had envisioned the movie as an alien invasion, but when he heard that he was actually ripping somebody off who wasn't going to put up with it, he changed it so that it became these sort of subterranean fungus from the Cretaceous era. And Heinlein said, "I'm not buying it." You ripped me off, and we all know it.
Lance is leaving, so goodbye, Lance. Thanks for hanging out with us.
Lance. Hey, thanks for checking us out. We'll see you on Monday.
Take care,
Lance. And so, yeah.
Let's see. Zuper is talking smack about Corman, saying he made too much garbage. Well, yeah. That's
what I love about Superplex. Superplex has an opinion on everything. And I love Roger Corman. Corman was great. Yes, he made a lot of schlock, but every movie he ever made money.
Yeah, he knew how to make money. I mean, and he started James Cameron's career. Without Corman, there would be no James Cameron.
Jonathan Demme.
Jonathan Demme. That's right. Point. Yeah.
That's why Corman has a walk-on in Philadelphia.
I never knew that.
Jurors in Philadelphia. Yeah, he plays one of the jurors. And it's because Jonathan Demme thought you gave me my career. Coppola, Nicholson got his start working with Roger Corman. So yeah, but he did
I
make a
think I
lot of
knew that.
schlock.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, if you watch the Terror, he stars in the Terror,
Right.
but he has a walkout in Little Shop of Horrors.
Okay. Yeah, I'll have to
Yeah,
look for that because I don't remember that, but I believe you, of course.
the guy in the dentist office in the original. That's um I just said his name. Jack
Jack
Nicholson.
Nicholson.
Jack Nicholson. Yeah, he's fascinated by pain. He loves pain, and he like steals the scene. It's really really funny. But yeah. Sorry, Superplex, if you don't like Roger Corman. You can't like everybody now, can you?
A lot of people don't like Corman. We love him, but there are a lot of people who agree with you.
So yeah. And as you so aptly put it, he gave a lot of filmmakers their start.
He believed in giving people as much creative freedom and as much of a chance as possible. Like he really liked to let people take risks, because as long as they weren't spending too much money, they could do whatever they wanted. Corman was very open. He wasn't a dictator, like a lot of other studio heads who were spending more money than Corman and were a lot more worried about their investment. So, yeah,
And micromanaging.
exactly.
Yeah. Well, Corman didn't like. He also didn't like to do a lot of the work himself, so he would sublet that. He would farm that out to his underlings. Oh, do whatever you want. Well, should I? No, you got this. You know. Hey, Roger Corman Productions.
Corman was also in The
But
Godfather too. Yeah, because again, you said Coppola. Yep.
yeah, he plays one of the senators in Godfather too.
Yeah, I
If
did
I'm
know that.
correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's another
So
series that has a black sheep in it, Godfather 3.
3. I was just talking about that last night, and I have seen it. I've seen it on 2 occasions because I think I was too mean on it the first time, so I watched it again. And I got to tell you, if it hadn't been called Godfather 3, it wouldn't have been that bad of a movie. If it had just been like another random gangster movie, I wouldn't have hated it as much. You linked it with The Godfather, and that's unforgivable.
Yeah, that's what sinks it, I think. Yeah, that and
Yeah.
Sofia Coppola can't act. She can direct. She can't
No,
act.
no, she cannot. She cannot act. But that's what I said about the Columbia TriStar Godzilla movie.
Yeah,
If you had called it Big Iguana Eats New York, I could have
would have
had
been
fun with
fine.
it.
Yeah,
Yeah, but no,
Matthew
you called it
Broderick and
Godzilla.
Jean Reno just chewing the scenery together. It'd be great. Yeah,
Jean Reno was great. Matthew Broderick, he looked bored out of his mind. You could tell he was phoning
he
it
was
in.
he was just going for the paycheck. But still,
But
like
Jean Reno was having fun
Jean
with
Reno
it.
loved. Yeah, he's great. I love him.
You know, I love that scene. What do they call this? They called it French roast. And why are you guys chewing gum? It makes us look more American. My God, it does. You know, I'm losing my headphones here. There we go. That's better.
Baked
That's
Bean had
better.
asked me a bunch of questions about Godzilla that I thought I was going to answer, but I don't remember what they were off the top of my head. But one of them was, what are your favorite and least favorite additions to the Godzilla like canon, like other monsters and stuff? And I think my answer for both is the '98 Godzilla, because it's terrible as a Godzilla, but the fact that Toho then folded it in to their own canon and basically just use it as the butt of jokes, I think it's fantastic. I love it. I love that he's there. I love that there's this one movie, Godzilla Final Wars, which is batshit insane. And they have their Godzilla fight the '98 Godzilla and just beat him like in seconds. It's fantastic. I love it.
Well, the best comment I ever heard on the '98 Godzilla was they were interviewing this, and I believe he was a filmmaker, but they were interviewing this gentleman from Japan, and he goes, "When I was a kid and I used to play Godzilla, he smashed buildings, he stomped on people. The American Godzilla just runs away from
Yeah, he
stuff."
just keeps running away. He gets like tangled in the thing of the Golden Gate Bridge. It's so stupid.
So that's definitely my least favorite. You know what? I gotta say though, my most favorite, it's still gonna be King Kong versus Godzilla. I love that movie. It's inconsistent in its pacing, but I love it. I just eat it up every time
It
I
is
see
goofy, but yeah, nothing wrong with that. Um,
it.
I like
You
all
know where the,
Godzilla. Like it's hard for me to
so do
pick.
I.
I love them all.
So do I. So do I. But you know the connection with Frankenstein, right?
Well, yeah, there was going to be the Frankenstein versus Godzilla. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Frankenstein versus King Kong.
Or King Kong. I mean, yeah, yeah. You know what I mean?
But yeah, I knew exactly what you meant. But it was never made. But Toho bought the rights to the concept, and they not made only King Kong versus Godzilla, but it also created Frankenstein Conquers the World,
Right.
because they did use the Frankenstein then. Which the amazing thing about that film is, it's one of the few times Japan refers to the fact that it actually fought in World War II. They tend to stay away from that in
Yeah.
their movies.
Interesting.
But the opening sequence shows, and this is an actual thing. It showed the submarine courier service, where the Japanese would send a long range submarine and meet like around South Africa. They'd meet a German sub and exchange technology, and then go back. It actually shows that in the beginning of uh, Frankenstein Conquers the
Conquers
World.
the world. Right.
And I was like amazed that they actually referred to this sort of link with Germany during the war, because they don't like talking about that.
I have a copy of it, but I haven't actually watched that movie yet.
Oh, really? Check it out. It's wacky.
I've got
It's
a lot of
wacky,
wacky Toho non-Godzilla movies that I bought. I just haven't watched. I just got to find time to sit down and watch them.
and then the sequel, of course, is War of the Gargantuas.
Yep, got that too.
So Toho really got the money's worth
Yeah.
out of buying that concept.
I don't know. If I had to pick a favorite edition, it would probably be Mechagodzilla. I'm a sucker for Mechagodzilla. I love Mechagodzilla. I even liked him in the legendary version, even though he wasn't on the screen for very long. I like Mechagodzilla. That's all. I like his like the very first Mechagodzilla movie, where it's like Godzilla going on this evil rampage, and it's not Godzilla. It's actually Mechagodzilla in like a Godzilla suit.
Godzilla.
I love that. That's great.
Unrelated, but Robert Dunham, who was, of course, the Emperor of Zootopia,
Yep.
and also he was also in Mothra
Yep.
as an American cop, I believe. When he retired, he was living one town over from me,
Oh,
right here
really?
on Cape Cod.
Cool.
Yeah, he was living over in Dennis. So yeah, I never met the man, but I used to. Some of his neighbors, he had passed on by this point. Some of his neighbors used to come into the video store I worked at and would talk about him and stuff. I guess he was a really cool guy in real life. Yeah. Yeah. It was funny because most Americans, even if they learn Japanese, they're not very good at it.
Right.
He spoke fluent. He was stationed in Okinawa when he was in the Marines, and put a lot of effort into learning the language. When he was living in Japan, the students would call him up and say, "We'd like to speak to Mr. Dunham." This is he. No, we don't want an interpreter. We'd like to speak to him directly, please. This is he. Yes, we get it. You're an interpreter, but no, we have our own interpreters. No, this is Robert Dunham. They wouldn't believe that it was him because he didn't have a trace of an accent, supposedly.
Right. That's cool. Because yeah, I know a lot of the times when Toho would use American actors, which they did a lot, they would tell them, just speak English. We don't want you to try to speak Japanese.
Nick Adams was famous
Nick Adams,
for that.
yeah.
Yeah, famous for that. Yeah. And yeah, I think that's where they conceptualized Chewbacca, the idea that we'd have these people that, for some reason, they didn't speak the same language, but people could still understand them.
But yeah, getting back to the topic at hand, Mandy, you're right. The
Yes.
78 Invasion of the Body Snatchers is the only one I actually think is scary. The other ones are just fun. The 78 one is actually frightening to me. Like, there's just something about it. Just it gets into that part of your brain, that like paranoid part of your brain, and really like just eats away at it. I love it.
I'll definitely buy that. I do think the original ending to the 56 was scarier, where he's screaming, "You're next, you're next, you're next." If they left it there, it would have been a much scarier movie. That little attempt at a happy ending at the end, I think, sort of derailed it a little bit. But
Yeah, I don't know if I brought that up at the Snyder interview, but
you did.
Yeah.
You did. I'm just reiterating.
That was tacked on. Like, that was a studio mandate. They didn't want to do that.
And it doesn't even feel like it's from the same movie.
No, it's not. Like, they added the beginning and the end, like the book ending
Yeah,
story.
they bookended it, yeah.
And they also added all the little voiceovers in the middle of the movie that are completely unnecessary. That's the studio's fault. Like, those are some of my least favorite things about the movies and the movie, and those are all from the studio, not from the actual filmmakers.
It really feels like it's they're trying to do that whole Sam Spade thing.
Yeah.
But it's like for stupid people. It's like, I walked up the staircase. I see you walking up the staircase. You don't have to explain stairs to me. I got this. Thank you. They did the same thing with Harrison Ford, but Blade Runner.
Blade Runner. Yeah, the
Blade
original
Runner.
cut.
In the original, they didn't have that completely unnecessary voiceover.
And that one was
Um,
really trying to be Sam Spade. Like they were telling Harrison Ford to read it like Sam Spade.
he even tried to do the whole Bogart
Bogart.
lisp thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which I can't do, even though I'm a huge Bogart fan. I never learned how to. They were all against me. I just can't do it.
I don't
But
even
we all
try.
know what I'm trying
Yeah.
for. Yeah.
That's another thing about the '93 version is that there's completely unnecessary voiceover from the teenage girl's
Well,
point
that's
of view.
tragic.
Yeah,
And she sounds bored.
bored to
Like you could tell.
tears. Yeah,
It's like you could tell they decided to do that after the movie was made. Here, read this. Do I have to? Yes, you have to. It's in the. Oh, I've never hated someone so much in my entire life. It's like, really? Really? It's painful to listen to her. And again, we don't need to see it. It's
Yeah.
like we can see him blowing stuff up with the helicopter. You don't have to explain you were doing it for revenge.
exactly. We know.
I
We
understand
get
that
it.
concept. But yeah, that was painful. The 56 was just unnecessary. The 93, it was just
Yeah, in the '93 version, it's cringy. In the '56 version, it's fine. Like it shouldn't be there, but it's fine. I can live with it. But in the '93 version, it makes me. I don't like this.
I couldn't agree with you more. And also there's she had met the guy like the night before,
Yeah,
and they have this like
and they're
huge
instantly
connection.
into like a romance. It's weird.
I'm like, come on.
And he
Even for
barely
young
says
people.
anything. He's just like staring in the middle distance, you know?
I mean, the only thing he really does is he finds the kid when the kid's trying to run away from the school.
Right. That's how he's introduced.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's how he's introduced. But they form this huge bond in like 2 days. I'm not buying it. I'm not buying it.
And it's especially weird because when they meet up again at the bar, it's very awkward. She doesn't know what to say. He doesn't know what to say. And so they go from that to walking out in the fog in the night and kissing. Like, wait, what?
Yeah.
How
Yeah,
did
I
you
know.
go from A to
And
B?
And they do that thing where instead of they play I Never, but instead of a drinking game they use the 10 fingers. Which no, it's I Never's a drinking game.
It's a
Trust
drinking
me, I
game. You have to
understand
drink.
this. You have to drink when you're doing it. But they were trying to downplay the fact that he was buying beer for an underage girl. Let's face facts, is not cool. But it's part of the plot. I get it, but let's not like
No, that's not a good
feed
thing.
into it. Yeah.
Military base.
Yeah.
I've seen it.
And there's no way they would serve the general's daughter. Everyone in that base would know who the general's daughter was, and there's no way the base, because the general would flay them alive. So, I mean, I understand she's in a rebellious phase, but no one would buy into it because that's their boss's daughter. And this guy could send you to Guantanamo. So,
Especially if he's Arlie Ermy. Come on.
maggot.
I do want to say, like, they're having a debate in the comments about Ferris Bueller being Matthew Broderick's best or last good movie. I disagree. I think it was Election. I really like
You
it.
almost made coffee come out my nose. I haven't seen Election.
It's a dark comedy where like he's got this like teacher's pet kind of character that he despises, played by I don't remember who she's played by anymore. But like she's having this student election to be like class president, and he's basically trying to sabotage it. It's really dark, and it goes in some really dark places, but it is hysterical. I love dark humor, so it works for me. It's an underappreciated little film, and Matthew Broderick is he's a teacher. This is like late '90s, early 2000s, I think. That was the last Matthew Broderick movie I remember liking.
Yeah, he never really when he was playing an angsty teenager, it was great, but I must confess I was never a fan of his later works. I've seen him in other stuff, and well, like I say, I think the low water mark was the Godzilla, because he clearly was phoning that one in.
Absolutely, yeah.
But
and he was so weirdly miscast too. Like that was not a Matthew Broderick character.
I know, but again, the rest of the cast, like Hank Azaria, actually really gave a strong performance in that, even though he was like a sidekick. So I don't know why Matthew Broderick
That's true.
doesn't.
He was
Well,
fun. Yeah, Hank Azaria was fun. I haven't seen that movie in so long. But yeah, I remember liking Hank Azaria, and I remember loving Jean Reno. And I remember being baffled by the end when it turns into a Jurassic Park movie.
Jurassic, we used to call it Jurassic Park 3
So
in
weird.
in the video store. Yeah, oh yeah, Jurassic Park 3 because they're being chased by the little babies, I guess you'd call them, and and of course they missed one egg, so sequel time. There's not going to be a sequel.
No.
Not this time. I'm sorry. No, no.
But no, guys, don't get me
But yeah.
wrong. War Games and Ferris Bueller, those are Matthew Broderick's great movies. That's it. That's the end of the list. So don't get me wrong. He's not like a great actor or anything. He's Matthew Broderick. He is what he is.
Well, he's married to the lady from Sex and the City.
That's
His
true.
claim to fame
Yeah.
nowadays. Sarah Jessica Parker, who got her start playing an awkward teenager
Yep.
in Square Pegs, the '80s cult TV series, which lasted like 6 episodes.
And she's in one of my wife's favorite movies, L.A. Story, where she's like a ditz. She's really good in that. That's all.
I can see that.
That's all I got.
Yeah, I got nothing. I got nothing.
Oh, Dan, Daily Dan is here. Hello, Dan.
Oh, Daily Dan, the good stuff. Dan, how you doing? Good to see you, man. Good
His
to
ears
see
must have been burning. We were talking about him earlier. I think that was before we started recording, though.
you. Speaking of Godzilla, he found he knows these great thrift stores and whatnot, and he found this Godzilla model kit from the early '70s, and it was cool because you had an option where you could replace the claws and the head with these sort of glow in the dark versions.
Right.
So you could have it glow in the dark or not. And I had that when I was a kid. My mom's best friend at the time, who I idolized, he's the one who kind of got me into the Universal monsters because he looked like Wolfman Jack, but talked like Count Dracula. So he was sort of a wolf pyre
Nice.
in my mind.
That's awesome.
And he bought me this sort of this Godzilla model kit. I had it for years, and I hadn't thought of it in years. And he showed it, and I'm like, I had that when I was like 6. Oh my god.
Yeah, and Ian,
I-
like yesterday, just posted a video about the Pepsi Jet fiasco that I had completely forgotten about. But somewhere in like a dark corner of my mind, it came rushing back after I started listening to Ian talk about it. And it's just like, that's an amazing flashback of something I haven't thought about in 30 years.
I remember the ad campaign. I didn't remember the legal battle. And that's a great story. And I wonder if that's where they got the idea for Bart's Elephant Stampy.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I bet the two are somehow related. Crazy. Oh, you can still get the Godzilla model kits. No kidding.
$30. That's it.
No kidding. Well,
That's pretty awesome.
crazy. That's crazy. Huh. Thrash a wolf pyre. Yes. It was either that or a Van Wolf.
Van Wolf.
A werebat. Oh, a werebat.
Werebat works.
That can work. Werebat works. It'd be an awfully big bat. Well, they never explained that. Lon Chaney's overall mass didn't change when he went from being himself to the Wolfman.
Right.
Dracula got very, very, very small when he turned himself into a bat. Now, the laws of mass say you can't do that. The mass is never... I don't know. I'm reading too much into it.
Dracula could turn himself into fog, so, whatever.
The rest of the mass is taken up by the fog around the bat. There you go. It used to bother me in Space 1999 when Maya could turn herself into things of differing size. It's like, I understand you turn yourself into something, but how can it be smaller than what you actually are or bigger than you actually are? But what do I know?
Dang it, John. No, nobody said yogurt.
I just looked over and I saw that. I'm like, are we going to start again with this? Are we going to start that again?
Very cultured bunch of fans we've
Cultured.
cultivated.
Cultured.
What were we talking about? Sorry, got completely derailed by yogurt.
A variations on Dracula.
Right,
Before that,
right, right.
Godzilla. At some point, we're gonna have to talk about the Invasion of the Body Snatchers franchise.
Oh
That'd be
yeah,
nice.
that'd be interesting. I have a lot to say about that.
At some point, at some point, we'll get around to it. Uh, but yeah, I still think I don't know. I was gonna say something about the second one and I completely forgot what it was. Well, it'll come back to me. But I hate it when I do. Usually I can catch myself and say, "Oh yeah, it was this," but no, not this time. So I'll go. You go ahead and I'll just comment on what you say.
Earlier, one of the commenters said something about it being both a remake and a soft reboot, and I think that's just playing off of the fact that Kevin McCarthy shows up, which is a fantastic scene where he's just banging on the window. They're here, you're next. I mean, like, what's not to love about that scene? That's great. So yeah, you can in your head come up with an explanation that this is actually a sequel to 1956. That somehow for 22 years this guy has been running around trying to tell people that the pod people are coming and nobody's listening to him. But
And it's like The Fugitive, where he goes from town to town.
right, and now he's in San Francisco.
It's almost like the Invaders TV show, which was also Quentin Martin, where he's going from town to town trying to warn them, and he fails at each town, so he just has to move on to another town. And that could actually work. So it's a tantalizing concept. Does it hold water? I don't know. It was great though that they got.
It was just
McCarthy
a fun
back.
cameo. Like, you don't really have to read too much into it, but I think it's fun.
But it plays on my theory that all good U.S. science fiction is basically The Fugitive with a sci-fi setting.
I knew you were going to say it. I knew it.
Yeah, of course, I had to. I can't. It's the Goldsmith, the Goldberg, but it's like my all my theories eventually come back to that one. That's my cornerstone theory.
Fair enough. I'm not going to debate you on that. That's great.
Well, I mean, there are exceptions, but I mean, a lot of them really do fit that template. And how many times did Gene Roddenberry try to rip it off? There were 3 Dylan Hunt incarnations, and all of them failed, but all of them were basically the same thing. But there we go.
Yeah, we'll talk more about Gene Roddenberry tomorrow.
We'd almost have to.
Yes.
We'd almost have to. So I was going to make another point about that, but I'll save that for tomorrow, too. Don't want to give the game away. Dilly Dan says the good stuff. It's a Mandela effect. I remember him saying, "They're back, they're back."
That's not what he said, but I can see that being like rooted in your brain and you just thinking that that's what he's saying. Yeah, I get that. Mandela effect, totally.
She says they're back in Poltergeist.
That's true. They're back.
So there is a they're back there, but But yeah, no, he's like, you're next, you're next.
Yeah.
You're next. It's like the urban legend, room for one more. You're next. But
anyway, guys, seriously, if you have questions, ask them. It's a Q&A. We can't A without Q's.
Well, I can answer what I think you were going to ask.
There you go.
I agree with what Daily Den was going to say. But Superplex actually agrees with somebody. Says that's cool, Dan. Zup, are you feeling okay?
That's very out of character. I think he's been hacked.
Yeah. Oh, Mindy Butler also watched 1999. It was a great show, particularly the season that had Maya in it. Were there 2 seasons or 3? I can't remember. But Maya wasn't in the first one. I think she was in the second one. But those I thought were some of my favorite episodes. But and that was Jerry Anderson, wasn't it? One of his live action as opposed to one of his puppet shows. You're not familiar with Space 1999, are you?
Not really, no.
And I've so put you on the spot. I am so sorry.
It's okay. I have blind spots. I don't hide them. I don't apologize for them. I have blind spots. It happens.
That's the weird thing about being a sci-fi geek is that you automatically assume everyone
knows
everything you're talking about. like we have a caucus. Like I went to like school to become a sci-fi geek, and you didn't take Jerry Anderson 101.
I remember I was talking to somebody who liked old sci-fi movies and they didn't know who George Powell was, and that really confused me. Like, how do you how do you know classic sci-fi and not know who George Powell is? That's so weird.
He made what 3 of the best sci-fi
Yeah,
films ever made?
yeah.
At least
At
2.
least 2. You got Time
At least
Machine
2.
and War of the Worlds at
Or
least. I mean, those are
But
classics.
I always throw in Robinson Crusoe on Mars. I just
Yeah,
watched
yeah.
it again the other night. I love Robinson Crusoe on Mars, and of course, then you got Worlds Collide. So you got to pick at least one of those other 2. I think we're up to at least 3 at this
Oh,
stage of the ball game. But yeah, how do you not know who George Powell is? You know,
it's just
and
weird.
consider yourself a sci-fi fan. You know,
Yeah, I've got
well,
the
I don't like.
Criterion version of Robinson Crusoe on Mars. I'm gonna do a video on it one of these days.
It's a great film.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And Adam West has that very small walk, and you think he's going to become the star. That's actually one of the I don't say the cool things about it that he does, but it's one of the that really catches you is that you think Adam West is going to become the star, and then they like kill him off in the first scene, and you're like,
What?
really?
What are we doing?
But of course, he wasn't the megastar he became. Well, actually, he never really became a megastar. He wasn't as big of a star as he was after Batman.
In geek circles, he's still a megastar.
Well, of course, he'll always be a megastar to us. But name 2 things he did besides Batman. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Or at the very least, didn't involve Batman. I think he did an episode of Operation Petticoat.
Let's see.
He actually made a joke. Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just reading the comments. Baked Bean asks what our favorite TNG episodes are. He's trying to get us talking about Star Trek.
I was going to say you don't want to give the game away. So, yeah, we best save that for tomorrow.
Yeah,
Big
we'll
Bean, I know
discuss
you're
it
going to be there tomorrow night.
Yeah.
The only thing I wanted to talk about TOS today, though, is that there were actually a couple of episodes which actually involved this sort of body snatcher subplot. Operation Annihilate, of course, where they're the cells of the overall big creature, and of course, what little girls are made of, where they make the replicants.
Oh, right.
And the guy's going to use that to take over the universe.
Yeah.
And one of the worst episodes they ever made, the one where Kirk's old girlfriend is a crazy person and tries to switch bodies with him.
That was like one of the last episodes, yeah.
I think it was the last episode. I think that was the last
You
one
might
they
be right.
filmed. But either way, it was one of the last, and it was terrible.
Pretty bad, yeah.
It was apart from the open misogyny, it was just a bad episode. So it was funny just how many episodes of Star Trek actually revolved around the plot of what we're talking about today. But again, I don't want to get too deep into Star Trek, or
And Next Generation, very first season, had the conspiracy with the little bugs that would like crawl up into your brain and would change people. They were basically pod people. Yeah, that was pretty cool.
Oh, yeah. Yes, and was it not Search for Spock? It was, but there was, of course, the film where they Multibon has the earbugs.
Yeah. That was the Wrath of Khan. Wrath of Khan.
Thank you, Wrath of Khan. How could I have not thought of Wrath of Khan?
What is wrong with you?
Possibly my favorite. We're getting too deep. We're going down that rabbit hole. So.
Look what you've done, Baked Bean.
Are you from the Boston Beans too, by the way? I got that from somewhere. Well, I get everything from everywhere. I just can't remember where I got it from. GR says the Wrath of Khan. Thank you. Yes. And I keep wanting to talk about Star Trek now. You see what you've done? Like, nope.
I'm trying to get it out of my brain too. Nope. Trying to think of something else.
One thing I could ask you: have you ever seen the episode of the Alfred Hitchcock show, Special Delivery?
What's it about?
Funny you should mention it. It's based on this Ray Bradbury story called "Come Into My Cellar" or something like that, and it's set. There used to be all these in the backs of comic books that there'll be all these like gimmicks that kids could make easy money on, so they wouldn't have to go out and get paper outs or Milans. And in this one, it's you can buy these kits to get mushroom seeds, and you grow mushrooms in your cellar, and sell them to people door to door. And you find out that the mushrooms are actually mind control entities.
Okay.
And the kid becomes enslaved by the mushrooms, and well, hilarity ensues. Um, but it was again a very early depiction of this sort of mind control entity, and it later went on. Ray Bradbury, of course, who also wrote Fever Dream, and later on, this was, I think, one of the inspirations to The Stuff, which of course I've talked about
Right,
as
right.
well. So it just seems like there's a lot of borrowing,
Oh, for sure. Like that's true of anything. But yeah, Invasion of the Body
but
Snatchers
it's
didn't just spontaneously appear. Like you can trace it, the story throughout all kinds of different fiction. Like sure, that's true of everything.
it's a really slick episode of the original Alfred Hitchcock Presents, and it was funny because they generally didn't do science fiction. That was sort of Twilight Zone
Right,
and The
right.
Outer
Outer
Limits.
Limits. Yeah.
He did mostly like he mostly did like thrillers, um, some horror, but he very seldom did science fiction, and it was a rare departure into science fiction, and it was very slick. And of course, it was Ray Bradbury.
Of course. Yeah. No, John.
I
Night of
know.
the Triffids was walking plants. It wasn't anything like that. I mean, yeah, there's nothing body snatchery about Night of the Triffids or Day of the
Yeah,
Triffids. Day of the Triffids, right? Yeah, it's Day of the Triffids.
they're the Triffids, and it does. Again, the Triffids don't mind control; they just sort of eat you.
Yeah, but they did come from space on a comet that
Space
also made
Force,
everybody blind.
yes.
Yeah, so there's a
Blind.
little bit of there, but
But that's only in the movie. That's not from the book. In the book, if I remember correctly, it was spores. They were trying to grow. It was basically biodiesel. The Russians were experimenting with
right.
biodiesel, and some clown came up with a plan to weaponize it, and hilarity ensued. They for the convenience of plot, they made it these like eye burning out and spore producing comets because it just made it. They combined the two. 'Cause I believe there was the light show in the book, wasn't there?
I've never read the book.
I haven't read it in years.
I did do a lot of research for it when I did my video on Day of the Triffids. I think there was a comet, but it was kind of like ancillary to the plot. Like it wasn't really an important part of the
Unrelated.
plot. And yeah, the book was originally it's basically about Lysenkoism, which is the Russian philosophy of basically anti-science, and they were trying to do genetic engineering before that was even a thing. And so that's what the book was kind of extrapolating, is that this was invented by the Russians and got out of control. But yeah, I haven't actually read the book. That's just what I understand about the book.
In John Christopher's Tripod series, though, um, the aliens they don't use spores, but what they do is they use subliminal advertising of sorts. They broadcast messages down to Earth, and people who are very susceptible. It becomes almost like power of suggestion, and it's like put a bomb in this building, or attach this antenna to your neighbor's head, and they start doing it. And what they do is they put the caps on, which makes it even harder to ignore the subliminal advertising, and that's how the aliens take over. So it's a mind control, but it's through a scientific as opposed to a bio weapon of some
Right.
sort. But there are plenty of other cases of mind control, alien invasion works. But yeah, not Triffids. Although I love the story. Have you seen any of the BBC adaptations of the Triffids, by the way?
Yeah, the video I did was on the first one, the one from like 1981, 82, something like that. Yeah, and I haven't seen the more recent one. I've heard it's terrible, so I just haven't
It
bothered.
is. It is. It is. They were trying to go more with it. It was the same problem.
Super! Who is Rush? What is wrong with you?
Oh,
Sorry.
the band.
Yeah, the band.
The band. Well, that was too obvious. He must be Rushmore. He's abbreviating the movie Rushmore.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, no. I'm giving him too much credit.
They were talking about science fiction in song, and somebody brought up Rush because 2112, of course.
With you, I'm
Yeah.
with you. Of course, Queen did in the year of '39, which they say is where that Interstellar film was actually based on. I think there's more to it than that, but I can certainly
You see some
where they were going with
inspiration.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah. The saddest, I think, of course, was BOC when they were approached to do heavy metal. They thought they were getting the contract to do the
The
whole
whole thing,
soundtrack,
right? Yeah, yeah.
and they wrote all these songs, and the guys just kind of went, no, we wanted a track, as in one," and they were kind of like, well, if we asked you nicely. And those were actually turned into Fire of Unknown Origin, which is one of my favorite albums.
Yeah.
Them. But I always felt bad for them because, like, well, Queen got to do a soundtrack. Why can't we do a whole soundtrack? And it's literally how it played out. I felt so bad for them. But funny that wasn't made more clear at the get-go. Like someone did.
Yeah, they're the only ones who misunderstood the assignment, so I don't know.
Well, go big or go home, as the saying goes.
It's funny, Mr. Led, you mentioned Limbaugh. My father-in-law, when I was still just getting to know him, like when I was just about to get married to his daughter, we were having a conversation about politics, which I don't recommend, but that's what we were doing.
Ever.
And he started saying something about libertarians and how they listen to Rush. And I really thought he meant the band Rush. And I'm like, oh yeah, I listen to Rush a lot. And then he goes on and starts talking about Rush Limbaugh. I'm like, what? No, that's no.
Different Rush.
Totally different Rush.
Huge. Totally different Rush. Yeah, I avoid politics at all costs, as you know. The other night, and it wasn't intentional. It was just the way that the conversation went. A couple people started bringing up political. And I'm like, no, that's not what this channel's for.
Away.
Well, the funniest. I was doing one of Dave's shows once. This is ages ago, and he loves to do trivia questions at the end. And I can't remember what the question was, but the answer was the Civil War. And scamp that I am, because Dave asked me specifically. So, Bob, what did you get for question number 4? And I went, the War of Northern Aggression. And it triggered like this in the comments section, like
the Civil War.
You support the be like, oh, you support the South, and I'm like, no. Oh, so you hate the South? No. And it was weird. And then people started fighting with each other, and I'm like, I'm so sorry I did that. It was a joke.
Look at what you've done.
I know, right? I started a Civil War.
Pretty soon they're going to be donning blue and gray shirts, you know?
I just wear plaid, then I can get both sides.
Yeah.
I'm a survivor. It's the one thing I'm good at. Well, that and trivia questions. Although I should answer them more stoically in future.
Dance on those eggshells.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. Sometimes my wit is my strong point, and sometimes it does bite me in the backside. You go a little too far, and you can go a little too far without realizing it sometimes.
Oh, totally.
Like that one, for example. Mercy.
Yeah, I should change the chat rules to don't be a jerk, don't talk politics.
Can't hurt.
Yeah.
Although the best thing to do with that is just simply don't invite it. When it does come up, you just steer it in another direction.
Right, yeah.
You know, I'm always Emily Miller in the house.
Oh, speaking of people who like talking about politics.
Born and raised in the South.
Yeah.
Did she really say the South sucked in the South? She said the South sucked in the Civil War.
Yeah, let's not talk about that.
You see, Emily, this is what I'm talking about. You know, my brother lives in Raleigh. My sister lives in Wilmington, North Carolina. I have family there, so
yeah.
Not that they were born in New York, so it's not like they were like. Let's. I'm going to stop talking now.
Okay, so
yeah, that didn't last long.
Which ingenue from either 56 or 78? Which one is better, Brooke Adams or The fact that I can't even remember her name says where I'm going to go.
Says a lot.
Yeah.
She was actually. I
She's
can't
good.
remember her name either. She was in some other stuff, and I love the fact there was an old science fiction documentary I read. I saw years ago. I believe it was written by Ray Bradbury, but they talked about how science fiction, which is generally seen as misogynistic, actually in many cases gives women strength. That scene where she says, "You're talking like it's 1 against 3. It's actually 2 against 3.
Right,
You're
right,
not
right.
counting me." And she
She was
isn't
ready
just
to
a
kick
screaming
ass. Yeah.
meanie.
Yeah.
Yeah. She actually she brings it. She does fall asleep first, but you can't really blame her for that. The will is strong, but the flesh is weak. I thought she actually did a pretty competent job. I would have to give it to Brooke Adams, though. I thought Brooke Adams just brought it. And then, of course, when you throw in, I always get it wrong. Veronica Cartwright,
Yeah,
is that the
Veronica
Cartwright
Cartwright,
sister? Yeah,
that's her. Yep.
it is, because there were two of them, and I always mix the two of them up. I loved her as the sort of nouveau hippie conspiracy theory Red Danigan um, um, sidekick. I like the fact that both the man and the woman both had a sidekick in the 78 version. There was another woman. Jack had a wife, but she could have been replaced with a cardboard cutout. She brought very little. She brought very little. So, in answer to your question, totally 78.
Yeah, I think I'm with you too. Like, I really like the actress in 56, but apparently not enough to remember her name. Um, and you're right. Like, she even said that's like 3 against 2 when he was getting out knives. Like, he was gonna stab them. Like, this was before he got the drugs out. So I mean, she was ready. She was ready to go.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
So,
Oh yeah.
but yeah, Brooke Adams and she's just so charming, and you kind of believe the chemistry she has with Donald Sutherland, even though there's like a gigantic age gap between them. It still works. um,
But we've established that from Animal House.
that's true.
Because remember, he was a professor sleeping with one of his students. So Sutherland's not above age gaps.
No, not at all. He also did a French movie about Casanova like 2 or 3 years before. I don't recommend it. It's a terrible movie, but yeah, there's a lot of age gaps in that movie. Yes, Mr. Led, there was a quick nude scene where Brooke Adams, as the pod person, is walking around naked. And she does the scream, and she like sticks her tongue out really like a lizard. It's really, it sticks with you. What else? What else? What else? Yeah, they're still not gigantic. Well, Wing It's here. Hey, Wing It. How's it going? I saw you dropped a video. I haven't watched it yet.
Welcome to the party, Wing It.
Yeah, yeah. All these people showing up. I was about to start calling it, saying it's been an hour and a half, but now everybody's showing up. I don't want to call it.
It's been an hour and a half?
It has, believe it or not.
You're kidding. It doesn't feel like it's been that long. We're really keeping this lively, aren't we? But yeah, as one of the other things, like I noticed is, while the two films are very different, I love the fact that they're so similar.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
There was I don't know if they're still producing entertainment. I haven't gone to their site in some time, but there was a person on YouTube who used to make something called pre-makes, where what you do is you take a story of a classic film, and then you go through into like the silent era or just early filmmaking, and you cobble together enough material to do what would be an earlier version of that movie. For example, Jaws. He took all the footage you could find from old movies from the 30s that had sharks in them, coupled them together with some scenes from Captain Courageous, and says, "This is Jaws from 1940."
That's pretty
and
awesome.
It was kind of slick.
Yeah.
They were great. I loved them. He did Star Wars, using, of course, Flash Gordon and Buck Rogers type stuff. And
Well, I mean, that's
there were
what
a couple
Star Wars
others.
was, but
Was well, that's why it was so easy.
yeah, yeah.
But it's almost like if you watch them out of order, you'd think that the 56 was just like let's take this really awesome 78 version and make it as a 56 more innocent type film. But I love the crossover. I love the fact that so much of it works in both time frames. One thing that is weird, though, because one of your main premises is the fact that it's about divorce, and it's not.
Yeah,
in
the 78's not about divorce at all. Yeah.
I mean, we don't know we know Donald Sutherland is single. We don't know if he'd ever been married.
Right.
And Brooke Adams has a live-in boyfriend, but they're not married. So what was a central theme in the first one isn't even referenced. It is referenced though in the third.
93, yeah. There is like,
Yeah, because Meg Tilly is the second wife,
and again,
and they have the anchor baby.
talking about how it had all the right elements. I like that idea in the 93 version that you're going to deal with a stepmother situation, like a step parent, and how they're like changing your real parent, and how that plays into the whole Body Snatchers paranoia. I thought that's brilliant, but they don't really do
They don't
enough with it.
they don't exploit that at all.
Yeah.
You know, she changes almost too early.
She does. Like you don't get to know her at all.
We don't even really get to see the dynamic. I mean, we know the daughter resents her, but we don't know why.
Exactly, yeah.
You know, and it's funny because it's so easy to make the stepmom resentable, particularly if they have another kid, and now you're the second fiddle child in your own family.
Exactly, yeah.
Which happens. They could have done so much with that, and they didn't. And I don't know if it was for economy of time or they just didn't feel like it. Sometimes films, and correct me if I'm wrong, it seems like they skip over a lot of that because it's been done in so many other films. We can see the dynamic, so they don't have to spoon feed it to us.
I mean, yeah, that does happen. I'm not sure that's what happened here. I think what happened here is they just made a really short movie and didn't have time for it. Because I think the movie's even under 90 minutes. It's really short.
It is.
Yeah. So they may have even like scripted it. They may have scripted more of that, but they just never got to the shooting stage. And even if they did, they edited it out. But I don't think it even got that far.
Gotcha,
and somebody mentioned something I wanted to talk about. Hold on. Oh, and Mr. Led is leaving. Goodbye. Thanks
Letty,
for hanging
have a
out
good
with
one.
us.
Take care. It's
Oh,
great to
and my
see you as
mom is
always.
leaving too. Bye, Mom.
Bye, Tug's mom.
Let's see. I think it was GR said something. I've lost it.
Haven't we all? um, GR, you know, whatever good point you made earlier, make it again.
Yeah, I don't remember what it was, but there was something that I wanted to talk about and I've forgotten. And then somebody was mentioning Matilda May and Life Force, and that's distracting.
She sure was. Dun, 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 dun. I was in college when that movie came out.
Oh,
She
nice
was a
time for it, yeah.
cutie. She was a cutie. Now, am I the only person, though, because I've mentioned this a couple times and I haven't gotten much feedback, did anyone see the connection between that and 5 million years to Earth?
Oh.
That there's a sort of connection between Life Force and the whole Quatermass
I can see that. Yeah.
because I got that. And most people are like, maybe. And I'm like, well, no.
It's a little bit of a stretch, but I get it. Like, I can see it. I don't think you're crazy. I mean, you might be crazy, but not for that.
So yeah, I mean, I suppose it could go either way. Quatermass, they weren't vampires. I think that's the big thing.
That is
Like,
a big
people,
difference, yeah.
So people were trying to pin it more towards Planet of the Vampires, which Retro Nerd Girl just did an amazing retrospect on. And it almost feels like an extension of Planet of the Vampires because that's the end of Planet of the Vampires. They're coming to Earth.
Right.
You know. So, but yeah, she was distracting. I can't agree with you more. Wasn't Bill Nighy?
I never know how to pronounce his name.
He's great too. I butcher his name. Wasn't he in that movie too?
I don't know.
I don't know. I was too busy looking at Matilda.
I mean, I remember Patrick Stewart is in it. But it's been too long since I've
Yes.
watched it. I have to watch it again. Yeah.
Oh, GR just made another comment. Perhaps this was it. Donald Sutherland also slept with Indiana Jones's love interest Karen Allen in Animal House.
That is actually
Yeah,
what
that
I was
was-
going to talk about. Because I watched this 78 version as a kid a few times. Because I liked horror movies as a kid. And in my headcanon, I had like a Mandela effect. Where as an adult, I went back and rewatched it. In my head, I could have sworn it was Karen Allen and not Brooke Adams. Like I was dead certain that it was Donald Sutherland and Karen Allen in Invasion of the Body Snatchers, and I was so confused when I started watching it and that wasn't Karen Allen. I mean, she kind of looks a little like Karen Allen, but she's not really Karen Allen. I was lost.
More than a little. They're two cubs of the same litter, as Shakespeare
Yeah.
would have said.
They are very
You
similar.
know, so but so I can certainly see that. And Sutherland is almost interchangeable at that time. At that time, he had the sort of wavy, big '70s hair.
Yeah.
He looked like Kurt Vonnegut. Well, Kurt Vonnegut Jr.
Yeah.
He kind of reminded me of Kurt Vonnegut Jr. And I think that's actually the look he was going for.
Probably. Even when I went to college in like 2000, 1999, somewhere in there, a lot of the English professors still looked like that. Like they were frozen from the '70s. Like they never change.
Still wore the tweed jackets with the leather
Yep,
patches.
the leather patches and everything. Yep.
Yeah,
Nothing.
They had the pipe whether they smoked it or not. You know,
they can't smoke it anymore, but they still got them. Let's see. Oh, Donovan's here.
I miss pipes. My grandfather used to smoke a pipe. I miss pipes.
Yeah, they remind me of my father. We used to go camping, and he would smoke them when we'd go camping. So every time I smell pipe smoke, it brings me back to camping with my dad.
I can see that.
So it's a good memory. Happy memories.
Well, it's funny because there's a debate about, and I don't go too far off topic again, but I'm going to.
They're not asking enough questions. It's their fault.
I know. Well, they're having fellowship, and again, that's half the fun of our community. Return of the Living Dead. The debate goes on whether or not Ernie is a former Nazi, and there's a lot of great input.
Right.
The fact his name is Ernst Kaltenbrunner. There was an Ernst Kaltenbrunner. So it's probably Ernie Jr., you might say. He speaks German. When the rain starts coming down, he says it's coming down like a betrunken soldat, which is drunken soldier.
Right.
He's listening to German war music on his Walkman. But the pipe he had, my grandfather had a similar pipe, and it was European. So I'm wondering if they even threw that in there as a hint, like it's a Central European style pipe. But how many people would have picked that up in 1985? But I'm going to stick with it. I'm going to run with it. That's my contribution.
Totally, go for it. That reminds me of Donald Sutherland saying, "I think I'll have one of your Russian cigarettes now." What movie was that?
Firecrackers. One of those Russian firecrackers. I think I just sleep in the snow.
Thank you.
That is The Eagle Has Landed.
He's landed. Thank you. Yes.
Eagle Has Landed. God. Yes.
And you got the quote right. Never doubt Thrash.
Well, in addition to sci-fi horror, I'm a huge World War II buff. My degree, by the way, was in European history.
Oh, there you go.
Which is why I work in a restaurant. Try doing something with a degree in European history. But a huge World War II buff. So that's, and I've probably explained this to you 87 times. I'm going to do it one more time for the people in the chat who don't know this. My man cave I refer to as the bridge. And the reason I came up with that is because it works for sci-fi and war movies. The bridge, because in sci-fi movies it's always the bridge, get to the bridge, go to the bridge. Star Trek, again. But in a World War II setting, any war movie with the word bridge in the title is a good one.
Yeah.
You got Bridge at Remagen, A Bridge Too Far.
Bridge over the River Kwai.
Yeah, there's tons of them. So it just seemed like a very... So yes, I've seen The Eagle Has Landed probably, a lot of times. So, yeah.
My dad was a big World War II buff, so I've seen it a million times as well. All those movies, I've seen them. So
Duvall's in it too.
That's right. Yep.
Duvall plays the Amswehr agent. Yeah. Which is funny. In the beginning, they actually have Admiral Canaris. And it's like because Admiral Canaris actually was head of that department. And it was riddled with double agents. Like it was the most, they refer to that as the most ineffective intelligence gathering service in recorded history.
Right.
It did more for the Allies than for them. But our tangent's having another tangent.
Baked Bean asks, what sci-fi trope has been underused in the last 30 years that you'd like to see back in a movie? That's a good question. I think the just unapologetic creature feature, you don't get those anymore. If it's a creature feature, it's always got to be a metaphor for something. And it's usually like trying to subvert the genre. And there's not just like a fun creature feature like they used to make in the 50s. You know, they don't make those anymore. And I really wish they would. And as much as I love Alien, I think Alien kind of changed the game, you know? Like, every creature feature now is trying to be Alien. So, I don't know.
I'll buy that. One thing that ironically is in 30 years specifically, one thing I've noticed is that there seems to have been more and more attempts to make science fiction politically correct, and why I don't think it should be misanthropic. I think the more they try to sanitize it, the more watered down it becomes. Um, I think some of the best science fiction I've ever seen has dealt with the fact that humans aren't the good guys.
Right. Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So you don't have to portray them in a nice light. Ironically, one of the best interpretations of that we saw was in Avatar, which again talk about apologist literature. But again, the humans are the bad guys, which came out of that '70s sort of colonial or post-colonial guilt, which is a very, very valid feeling. Don't get me wrong, but that's what he was speaking to. But again, I just feel like we were talking about, and I don't recommend this for everyone because not everybody's cup of tea. A Boy and His Dog. I was talking with somebody about A Boy and His Dog the other day, and I'm like, they so could not make that movie today.
Not at all.
At all.
Yeah.
At all. And it's a pity because it's one of the best post-apocalyptic films ever made. I understand the hero, he's not a good guy, but it's not about good guys and bad guys. It's a story about this post-apocalyptic world
where those don't exist.
Yeah. And again, it's a pity they can't make films like that anymore.
There is definitely a fear, especially when you talk about big budget studio Hollywood movies. There's a big fear of just being provocative in general. It's like they feel like if they want to get a reaction out of the audience that might be negative, that would be a bad thing. And back in the 70s, that was pretty much everything. Everything was trying to provoke a reaction, was trying to make you feel something you didn't necessarily want to feel. And that's one of the reasons I love 70s sci-fi, is that it's gritty and it doesn't try to sanitize anything. It tries to let you get in touch with your own opinions and feelings about things without being direct or overtly political or anything. Just making you think, and I feel like there's not enough that does that anymore.
I couldn't agree with you more. Well, if people who've seen my Stranger in a Strange Land, where I talk about Heinlein at great length, people have been horribly critical of Heinlein in his day and after his death. And I don't think he was necessarily advocating anything horrific, or even wrong. He was simply getting people to try to question the belief system which created the dogma. But of course, people interpret that as him being a moral degenerate. And maybe he was, maybe he wasn't. I'm not taking sides here. But he's certainly made you think. I mean, when you read A Stranger in a Strange Land, it's like it's almost Socratic.
Yeah.
In the way it causes you to like question things. It's great.
Now with Heinlein, a lot of people confuse the writer with the universe. Like they always try to put the different ideas that Heinlein's putting forward as Heinlein himself, and that's really that's the wrong way to read Heinlein. Heinlein is trying to do that provocative thing. He's trying to provoke a reaction from you. Like if Starship Troopers feels jingoistic to you, that's by intent. Heinlein, maybe he was a little jingoistic, who knows? But he was definitely trying to provoke your reaction. He was trying to get you to think in a way that you wouldn't think on your own. And I think he did that with all of his work. Everything. I mean, some of his later work goes pretty far out there, and I don't really know what he was going for anymore. But you shouldn't try to read Heinlein as him expressing himself so much as him just expressing ideas, and taking those ideas to different places that maybe Heinlein himself would take them, maybe he wouldn't. You never know. Heinlein gets a bad rap for that, and I think it's just because people misreading him.
Well, I think a lot of people, much like Vonnegut and a lot of the other greats of sci-fi, people didn't want to like them.
Yeah.
So they were looking for excuses to not like them. And writers tend to be very controversial, and they will give you that excuse. Yeah. They will certainly enable you to find something. I did read somewhere that Heinlein did kind of see himself as Jubal Harshaw.
Oh, definitely. Jubal Harshaw is probably the closest you can get to Heinlein putting himself in his books. Yeah. In
his own work, yeah. So, and I do subscribe to that myself, actually. But I do agree with you that a lot of the things he put out there, he wasn't advocating again, just trying to be a provocateur, which is what we keep coming back to.
Right.
Which is a great word, by the way. It is provocateur, because it covers the bases.
It does.
I'm not advocating bad behavior. I'm just making you think about it. But yeah, I think Heinlein was great, and you don't get that anymore. You don't get that type of science fiction, and you see it a lot in other works as well. It's not just science fiction. You know, we were talking about '80s movies the other night on one of my live chats, and like '80s comedies. You know, they'd be considered so politically incorrect now. They'd be so what they call cringy, and sometimes rightly so. But even the one like, I was Repo Man.
Repo Man.
Oh my God! But Repo Man I think is the quintessential '80s movie, not just a sci-fi movie, the quintessential '80s movie. But I have to warn people. If I warn like younger audiences, I go be careful. There's a lot of racism, sexism. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that was considered just sort of cutting edge humor in 1985 that is now cancel worthy. Different times. This is weird. I was watching Saturday Night Live a couple weeks ago, and they were doing that thing where they were showing a repeat before the new one came on, and they put a disclaimer in front of it saying, please don't take this the wrong way. This is an earlier episode. We understand that views have changed in recent years. And I go, oh, they're showing one from 1975, huh? It was from 8 years ago. 8 years.
It's out of control.
It's like 1984. Eurasia's always been our enemy. It's like, well, no, 4 years ago, we don't talk about 4 years ago. 4 years ago was the dark times. We can't talk about that. And it's like, wow, things have changed that much in that short a span of time. It's crazy.
Well, it's like Disney Plus putting disclaimers in front of classic movies. Like, there's a disclaimer in front of Gone with the Wind. Why does there need to be a disclaimer in front of Gone with the Wind?
Well, it has that word in it.
Yeah, it does.
And they wanted to use a different word. I'm really glad that they used that one. But not that the word they did use was any better. But unfortunately, it's how things were at that time. When you make a period piece, you have to look at the period.
Right.
One of the funniest things they ever did in South Park is when they're having the Thanksgiving pageant, and it shows the Ute Indians having their little peaceful agricultural community, and the settlers just come in and slaughter them. And the school principal is hysterical. She's like, we can't have the pageant this way. And Mr. Hanna looks at her and goes, this is how it happened. I'm sorry. This is historically accurate. She's like, well, we can't do it. You want me to change history for the purposes of entertainment? Where have I heard that before? Why am I scared?
Let's see. Let's go back to the comments before we get even more political.
Oh, yes, I
know. John's talking about Ex Machina, which is a great movie. And that one is...
Wing It Production says...
Yeah, go ahead.
You first.
Wing It Production says, go ahead.
Agreed. Repo Man rocks. Totally 80s. Totally.
Yeah, I grew up on the Porky's movies. Talk about movies that wouldn't be made today.
They make reference to that in Guilty Pleasure. It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. I'm sorry, the show just cracks me up. Every time I watch it, I feel like I should be ashamed of myself.
I've actually never seen it, so I have no opinion.
But they do. There's an episode that is supposed to be a takeoff on those old '80s with the rom-com where they were really sex movies.
Yeah.
And it takes place on a ski resort, like a lot of them did, and they actually get a guy whose name eludes me for the moment, but he did a lot of these old movies. He was in Summer School and a few others, playing a guy who wanted to become a horror filmmaker. But they replicate the shower scene in Porky's,
right?
Where he's like, "This is a prank. We're going to look at the girls while they're showering," and the D is like, how is this a prank? Looking at unsuspecting naked girls in a shower. Oh, it will become a prank when I do this. And they're like, oh, no, you can't do that. And it's like, again, in 1983, that was considered funny. Nowadays, it's assault.
Yeah. Nowadays, there wouldn't be a laugh in the theater. People would just be like, oh, my God.
some people would walk out. They'd be
Yeah.
like, "Ew, we have no fun anymore."
Time Rider: The Adventures of Luke Swan. Have you heard of that? I have no idea what
Is
that is.
is that the one? If it's what I'm thinking of, it's this motorcyclist who is riding in a restricted area in the desert and accidentally goes back in time to the post-Civil War era
Oh.
and has all kinds of adventures. And I'm trying to remember the guy who started it. If I have the right movie, if I'm talking about a different movie, please stop me because I'm rambling. But yeah, I do remember that movie. And I believe, I can't even remember what the plot is. They run across some outlaws, and he teams up with the sheriff uh, to get the outlaws, but has to do so in a certain amount of time so he can get back to his own time. But yes, I saw that in the theaters. If it's the same movie, Lyle Swan,
Lyle Swan. Okay.
Lyle Swan. But yeah, if that is the same movie, then yes, I did see that.
It sounds like Hell Comes to Frogtown with time travel. Like,
well, funny you mentioned that because, spoiler alert, he ends up becoming his own grandfather. Which people love to do in time travel movies.
well, like Futurama, yeah.
Well, they did that in a rom-com with Hugh Jackman.
Really?
Where, oh yeah, where that is a problem. So basically, if you go back into a different time, do not have relations with anyone. Just play it safe.
Ever see the Flintstones when Fred went to the future? Is that when the Jetsons met the Flintstones?
No, actually, they go to a contemporary time.
Oh, okay.
And Fred gets in trouble because even though in all the other episodes he refers to money as bucks, he goes to buy a hamburger in this hamburger stand, and of course he's dressed as a caveman. So the guy's like, "That'll be 2 stones," and Fred's like, "Okay," and tries to pay him in stones, and they get the cops called on him. So yeah, I did see that episode, and I forget how they go back to their own time. I forget how they get into the future, but I did see that. I saw it, so
yeah.
Base covered. All your base are belong to us.
Someone set us up the bomb.
Yeah.
Baked Bean, was it you that said in a previous Q&A that Time Cop should be remade? I don't remember saying that, but I kind of believe it. Yeah, Time Cop probably should be remade because it wasn't done well. Like, it's not a terrible movie, but it's not a good movie either. And I think the concept could be done better. So I don't know if I actually said that before, but that's how I feel.
Was Ron Silver in Time Cop?
Yeah, Ron Silver was the bad guy, I think.
Okay, yeah. I like the premise. I like the concept that this guy goes through time stealing treasures, and that's why there are all these treasures that are missing because he stole them all. And anything that revolves around the Confederate, their last chance gold,
right?
I like. The Good, Bad, and the Ugly is probably the best example of that, where that's the goal they're trying to get their hands on. It was this infamous last shot where the Confederates pooled all their liquid capital. We're going to try to equip a new army.
Isn't that what National Treasure was about too?
No, that was the Freemasons.
Oh, that was the Freemasons. You're right. Yeah,
that was the Freemason treasure. But there was actually a precious metals drive in the South.
Yeah.
In the last days of the Civil War, and no one knows what happened to the money. There's one story I heard about some guy who had been a Confederate officer mysteriously became a millionaire after the war.
Right.
And no one was really sure where this invested in capital. My guess is that's where it went. My guess is that he was guarding it until the war ended. It's like, oh, no givesies backsies. But they never did find out what happened to this precious metals drive. But,
well, seems plausible.
Emily, you're from the South. What do you think? There was actually a short story about a guy who actually gets a glory hand so that he can try to find the treasure. And so it's a crossover between history and horror.
Right.
And those are always fun. Let's see. Any other interesting questions? Oh, well. I'm sure someone will come up with something interesting at some point. God knows I won't. How did we you get on time travel?
I don't know, but it's one of my favorite
That just
subjects.
occurred to me. Well, mine too. But I don't know how we got on it. Although there were some.
Obviously, I love time travel.
I must confess, I haven't read your book. I'm so
It's
sorry.
fine. I
have
don't
not-
shame people into reading it. It's fine.
Well, I have a list, and I'm not making this up. I have like 15 books that I've been meaning to get to for the last 15 years. I bumped Body Snatchers up to the top of the list for the purposes of the show, as I keep saying ad nauseum. But I mean, if I retired, I might be able to get through the books I want to read in a year.
Right.
So I have so much I have to get through.
Sahara was about an ironclad, like one of those Civil War era submarine type things, and that was based on a book by can't remember his name. My mother would know, but she's not here anymore. I like Sahara. It's a fun movie. And yeah, nobody knows how to spell Matthew McConaughey. I don't know how to spell Matthew McConaughey.
He doesn't. Of course, he's usually stoned. So,
Exactly.
he knows how to play the bongos. The only Sahara I ever saw was the Humphrey Bogart movie set in World War II.
Right.
World War II.
Yeah.
I didn't see it now, but this one, so it wasn't a remake.
No, it wasn't a remake. It was a brand new movie. It was about like treasure hunting in Africa and finding an old Civil War ironclad, basically in the middle of the desert. There's reasons. It's fun. It's a fun, silly movie. It's a lot like National Treasure. So it's that kind of movie.
I like National Treasure. I didn't love it, but I liked it. For what it was, I thought it was very nice.
I recently got a new appreciation for it because my son, he's in middle school, and in his English class, they actually showed him National Treasure to start teaching him about American history, and I thought that was kind of cool. So
that is really slick.
Yeah.
That's probably now that you mentioned, that's probably how I first started getting into history from historical films.
Yeah.
And then, of course, when I went on to college, that was a huge part of it. I still hold that, maybe not to teach, but at least to flavor. If you're doing like World War I, show them all quite on the Western Front. If you're doing Napoleonic Wars, show them the duelists.
Right.
Show them a movie from the period you're teaching, and it will give them more of a connection.
You'll get like the flavor of it. You'll understand it better. Yeah, I get that. Even if the movie is ridiculously historically inaccurate, if it gets you that feeling of the time period, I think that's enough.
And a lot of them are really, really inaccurate. There was, well.
And yes, thank you, Baked Bean. Clive Cussler. That's the guy who wrote Sahara. Sorry. I just wanted to thank you.
Oh. Braveheart. Braveheart is embarrassingly historically inaccurate. Like,
Very much so.
It's like Hogan's Heroes level historically inaccurate.
What's that other one with Mel Gibson? The Patriot. There's not an ounce of historical accuracy in it.
Well, what really bothered me about that was the scene where the British take all the people in the town and put them in the church and then burn it to the ground. That actually is from World War II.
Right.
So he's borrowing from the wrong wars. People forget during the Revolutionary War, the British still saw us as English subjects. They were trying to crush a sort of a mutinous organization, but they weren't trying to destroy us as a people. We were the same people, right. And I thought the Patriot completely missed that point. Entirely missed that point. But of course, it's Mel Gibson. Would you expect historic accurate from him?
He's not American. Hate to break to you.
But just not historically accurate at all.
But if you want to see a movie where Mel Gibson stabs a guy with the American flag, that's your movie.
Why not? Well, and of course they do that again in the Simpsons episode, which I still think is the one with Mel Gibson is one of the funniest episodes they ever did. This is the worst piece of garbage since Godfather 3. Whoa. Let's not say things we can't take back. Okay, we're sorry. Why did Mr. Smith kill everyone?
Hello, Keith. Thanks for dropping by.
Oh, Keithy, how you doing, bro? Good to see you. And
is Emily behaving? And she says, "Stop coming in here with jokes."
Daryl Johnson says, "Hi, Sierra."
We don't need no stinking
We need no
badges.
stinking badges. That's a treasure of the Sierra Madre. Speaking of treasure hunters,
Yep, yep.
it took me a second to get the connection there, but yes, yeah. Bogart gets decapitated in that.
I don't remember that.
No one does. No one does it. And someone had to point it out to me. He gets killed by the banditos at the end, but and one of them hits him with a machete, and you think that that's how he dies. But if you look closely, something rolls into the puddle in the background. That's supposed to be his head. So if you watch that scene again, because when you watch it, you can't unsee it.
Right.
Oh my God, that was supposed to be his head rolling into the puddle.
Wow. Yeah, I'll have to watch it again now. Because in my brain, it's just you see the swing and that's it.
Chop
It's over.
That's it, yeah. That's it. But no, it's boom.
Wow. Okay.
He plays such a bad guy in that. That was one of the great things about Bogart. Bogart could actually play good guy and bad guy with equal alacrity, and you don't get that a lot then or now.
Spoilers. Yeah, well,
Oh,
I'm pretty sure it's past the statute of limitations on that one.
if you haven't seen the Treasure of the Sierra Madre at this point,
That's your fault.
yeah, I'm sorry. I know, really. So, but yeah, Bogart was great.
Bogart was fantastic, and he
Really was.
he actually hit it big later in life. Like he was older than most actors when he hit it big, just like Karloff.
And W.C. Fields.
And when he hit it big, he was making really bad movies like Dracula X and stuff. Bad movies that I personally love, but they're bad movies.
My favorite thing on Karloff is if you ever seen his last movie, I'm sure you have, but for those of you who haven't, it's called Targets, which is about a story which has become all too common these days. But there's a scene he plays an aging star. In fact, they use clips from his actual movies,
Right.
and say these are part of this character's canon. But he's supposed to say, "I'm a dinosaur. I'm a charlatan." And so, when he's reading the script, he goes, "Do I really have to say all these terrible things about myself?" And they go, "No, we're not saying them about you, Mr. Karloff. That's the character you're playing, which is ostensibly you, but don't take it personal." But he actually felt bad having to read these lines because it made him sort of reflect on his life.
Hit a little too close to home. Yeah,
exactly. Precisely.
Well, it's like John Wayne in the Shootist, or he's dying of cancer when John Wayne was dying of cancer.
And that's why pretty much every friend he had in Hollywood had at least a walk-on in that movie.
Yeah.
Because it was basically like his goodbye card,
Totally.
and everybody wanted to sign it. And I think that's actually a really good movie, actually. A lot of people say, meh. I'm like, I really like The Shootist.
That you actually see John Wayne doing some legit acting in that movie. You don't see him do that very often, but usually he's just John Wayne. In that movie,
again, it was his swan song.
Yeah, exactly. And another good example of an actor who knew he was dying is Edward G. Robinson again from Soylent Green, where nobody else knew he was dying, but he knew he was dying, and he had to do that scene where he's like in basically the suicide chamber where he dies. It's knowing what's really going on makes that scene so much more powerful.
And again, opinion is divided. I heard an anecdote where the director and Mr. Heston knew.
Yeah. It depends on who you ask.
It was Robinson saying they were saying goodbye to each other because they've been friends for over 20 years at this point. Yeah. Some people say that's inaccurate, but I subscribe to it because there's a certain genuine emotion there between the two of them.
Yeah, Heston's reaction seems pretty genuine. Yeah.
Genuine. Yeah. Now he was that good of an actor; he could have faked that, but I really think,
I buy it.
And of course, yeah, Robinson was supposed to play Dr. Zayas. But he said, I can't do this heavy makeup. Not at my age, it's killing me. So he did do some screen test.
Screen test, yeah.
He did a screen test, which I have somewhere in my collection. But
the actress who plays Nova, Linda Harrison, was actually a
chimp.
Why can't I remember her name? The lead female chimp.
There was Cornelius
and Zira.
Zira, yes. And I believe Cornelius was played by James Brolin.
Yeah, James Brolin, that's right. Yeah. So that was the Planet of the Apes that never was. So that would have been interesting.
Well, the weird thing is the dynamic between he and Dr. Zayas is completely different.
Oh, completely. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Completely. I mean, they're almost on speaking terms,
They seem
you know,
friendly.
and yeah, which is funny because that's one thing you never get in either of the movies where the two are on screen together is Dr. Zayas and Taylor absolutely despise each other. If anything, Dr. Zayas hates Taylor more.
Yeah, because of what
Um,
Taylor represents. Yeah.
represents, yes, his destiny. Oh,
You won't
I just
like
want to
what
read to the
you'll
record.
find.
On your community page, the Wizard of Oz twist. I don't know where you found that, but it's one of the funniest things I've ever seen in my entire life. Where Dorothy sees the Statue of Liberty and she's banging on the yellow brick road. You maniacs! That's got to be the funniest thing I've ever seen.
It's
And
pretty
the other
funny.
three are just kind of standing there going. But Will, I must have told you this. I have about 12 concepts that if I ever could make a movie, I would use this concept. And one of them is an adaptation of Wizard of Oz, which is post apocalyptic,
Right.
where Dorothy comes out of a shelter
A bomb
after
shelter
being
or something.
50 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the Tin Man is a former riot control cop whose outfit is already gone. The Cowardly Lion is just some guy's been in the hills so long he's gone feral. The Scarecrow, well, he's been starving, so he's a very, very skinny guy. And the four of them go off and have adventures. I've always wanted to do a post-apocalyptic version of the Wizard of Oz, and
That could totally work. That'd be fun. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, you proved it. That one still short proves you can do a post-apocalyptic Wizard of Oz.
Okay, well,
I'm gonna do a post-apocalyptic musical.
it's been 2 hours. I think we got to call it.
I have had so much fun.
I have too. It hasn't felt like 2
much
hours. It
fun.
really hasn't. We
It,
got to
it
do this
hasn't.
again.
It has. Definitely. Definitely.
And I didn't do a public domain theater in November, but I am going to come back in December and do Santa Claus Conquers the Martians because I just have to.
I am all over it. Do you need a guest for that too, by the way?
If you want to be a guest, I will definitely put you on the list. Yep. You
I
can
would
a
be
guest.
honored. I would be honored. And guys, thank you so much for joining us, by the way, as always, by the way.
Yes, thank you, everybody. And if I
chat room.
forgot to say hello to you, it's not because I'm offended by your presence. It's just because I didn't see you as the comments were scrolling by. We were just having so much fun. I kept forgetting to look at the comments.
Anyway,
We'll never get back
take
to
care, everyone.
Kansas now, GR says. That's funny.
Who knows? It could be set in Kansas.
There you go.
Ooh, that could work.
That would be fun.
They're in Kansas and they're trying to get out.